Well, good evening, everybody. What can I say? What an awesome way! What an awesome way to start the evening. Um, well, we have a very, very special guest tonight. I'm not going to even introduce her because everybody knows her. Besides the fact that she's an exceptional race driver, um, she also, well, co-owns Powerflow exhaust in Salt River. But just before we get started, um, Andrea, are you able to hear us?
I can hear you guys, yeah, but I don't know if you'll be able to hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Okay, so
We can
just
hear you
before,
loud.
You guys get me?
yeah, so just before we get started, well, we are live already, but you know what? A good couple of things have happened in our country over the last couple of weeks and couple of months, and maybe last week or the week before, we lost a dear friend, the owner of Powerflow in Paro, Roddy, and maybe just a moment of silence for him and for everybody else that have lost their lives, over the last couple of days in whatever's happening, over in the other provinces and COVID and all the rest of the stuff. So yeah, I just wish and hope and pray that everything comes together for our beautiful country. And Baden, maybe you can just shed a little bit of light in that matter as well.
Yeah, sorry, I think we just lost. There we go. I've got Andrea back.
Okay, cool.
So, excuse me, folks. We just have a few technical glitches, but we are well and truly here.
That's perfect, Andrea. We can see you perfectly.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So I was just saying, we've had a couple of.
Yeah, there we go.
We've had a few things happen in our country over the last couple of days, last couple of months, last year possibly. So you know what? I just hope and pray that Roddy was one of them. I mean, it was very sad to hear of his passing, and all the other people that have passed on, due to COVID or due to the looting, the rioting, all the things that have happened in our country. But I just know and hope and pray that I know we're South African, so we're gonna get there again. We're gonna get on top again as we always do. And well, welcome to our show, Andrea, and my co-host Baden there. Thanks for everything, Baden. And tonight's show is really, if we would talk about Andrea's life as a race driver, it would take us 3 hours. But tonight we're going to talk about something very different because, well, we're going to put.
You're just being kind.
No. I mean, I met your dad when the late Jan Kriel was around still. That's when I was driving club. And your dad was one of the.
Wow.
Your dad drove a liftback, and he was one of my. I always looked up to your dad and to the late Jan Kriel because they also drove Toyotas, and I was a Toyota. I'm still a Toyota fanatic, and so is Byron, by the way. Yeah. So, okay. So tonight, Byron, how are you, my friend? Thank you for everything that you always do there.
All good. Thanks, Abdul. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, like you said, you can't ignore that the crazy times are going on at the moment. But isn't it lovely that we can still connect via technology and just live our passion. That's what I think it's all about and everything like it. And I think, Andrea, the last time I spoke to you was when you had your first competitive outing in the Morris Minor. I don't know how long ago that was. So, yeah, that just shows you how long it's been.
I think 2 years ago. I think. Yeah, it's been way too long. Way too long. We're overdue for a chat.
Okay, well, I might as well just extend an invitation to you to come and drive at our next Gymkhana. That's it. Everything's taken care of. Yeah, it's a bit different. It's a bit different to the one that you did in the polo. In the polo, it's not tighter. It's not as fast as that, but it's very, very cool. And don't worry, you'll be the first to know. We were supposed to have one on Saturday, but obviously due to various reasons, COVID #1. We're not going to be able to do it, which is fine. It's actually quite good. And with all the unrest happening in our country and all the instability. Yeah. So, tonight's topic is, this is a contentious issue. We can talk about exhausts. And, we always have this, is louder, faster, is bigger, better. And we have the best person to actually take us through this tonight. And, you guys can, all the viewers out there, if you have any comments, you know what to do. Send through the questions and we'll try and, Andrea will try and answer all your questions for you. And myself and Biden, we'll just sit and watch and listen. Yeah, well, we all try and do our best. Andrea, thank you so much. I know you've had a hectic 2 weeks. I've been chatting to you on and off, and thank you so much. There's already one. Andrea can use my golf for the Gymkhana. Okay, Byron, just make a note of that. And that's we need a signed document from George Thompson that was definitely on. Has it got 2 seats in? Ask him if it's got 2 seats in, because you're gonna need a navigator, by the way. George, has it got 2 seats in? Because with our Gymkhanas, we prefer you having a navigator. So we'll wait on that. So it's a bit different. Yeah, we work together as a team. But coming back to the saga of the exhausts, yeah. So I know you've had a couple of very, yes, it does. Cool, absolutely cool.
Excellent.
We're on. I'm not too happy if it's a golf, but it's okay. It's okay. We'll allow the golf.
We can't all drive Toyotas.
Yeah, you're right. We'll just say maybe the wheels were made in Japan. I'm happy with that. It's okay. Okay, so let us go through this. Byron, do you have any? Well, I'm going to start off with a couple of questions. Andrea, that's been an ongoing saga about exhausts. People have their views, and you're the best person to speak to. So let me just get straight into it. Let's take a standard road car comes into you guys for an exhaust, a free flow system. Obviously, stainless steel most of the time. Just take us through the process.
Only
stainless steel. What is better? I come in there with a Golf. I want to make the car faster, better, whatever. Where do we start?
Okay, so to answer the first question, and I think the first 2 questions, there are 2 of them. One is bigger better, and the answer is sometimes and to a certain extent. And the second question is louder faster. And the answer to that one, I think, might surprise many, which is no, it doesn't play a role in the performance. Performance will always be marginally louder than a fan, but there is no reason whatsoever to have a loud exhaust just to have the power. So to a very small extent, a loud exhaust will have a bit more power, but it's a very, very minor extent. And the power, if you go too big with the exhaust, you lose power. If you go too small with the exhaust, you lose power. So every engine has a sweet spot. And that's what we strive to do every day on every vehicle, is to find the absolute sweet spot for your motor, your modifications, and what you intend to do with it.
Okay. So, Byron, before we go into another question or there, Byron, you've got a couple of comments you might as well take care of, because otherwise we're going to have too many comments. We won't be able to take care of them. Yes. So, Byron?
Well, firstly, I would like to say hello, as I'm a mommy's boy, to my mum. Listen. Sorry there.
Yeah, but the internet's not really good tonight, eh?
Not very good tonight, and also as well to got great friend and Western Province commentator for life, Dr. Nick van der Meulen, and he says hello, Byron and Abdul, and my best to Andrea. It's great to hear from you again.
Absolutely. Okay, awesome. Byron, do you have any more comments you want to take care of before we go on into the exhaust saga?
Just one man over here as well, Ari Stylen, of course, one of the legendary marshals at Killarney as well. Been around for many, many years. Of course, he says hi to the gang and everything like that as well. And, it's just great as well. Found a few ways of spelling my name, which is quite cool. So, yeah. How's it, Ari? Thanks for listening.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so Andrea... we determined that louder is not necessary. Well, louder doesn't make a difference, actually. Whether it's loud or soft, it doesn't really make a difference to the power. So how do you actually determine what is the sweet spot in a car, in a vehicle?
So it is mostly, there are 2 things that determine that. One is the power output, and the other is capacity. So the bigger the capacity of your engine, the more air it can obviously move. So the bigger the capacity of the engine, the thicker you can go on the pipes. But combined with that is how much power the vehicle is producing, because you want to be able to move the exhaust gases away from the engine as effectively as possible. And if I can use the analogy of a garden hose, if you want the pressure to increase, you squeeze it tighter and the water comes out a bit faster. But if you had to put a huge big drain pipe in your hose, the water will trickle out. So you want a sweet spot on the vehicle, which, as I said, is determined by the capacity and the power output to move the gases at the most effective speed. The short answer to tell you how we determine that is many, many, many hours on the dyno over the course of the last 28 years. Powerflow has been around since 93. So we've had a good number of years testing out what the different power bands are, where we need to start moving from one diameter to another, and that sort of thing. And we're currently ongoing with that testing for the new vehicles that come up with those with a bunch of tuning houses, so that we can make sure that we are providing the most effective and the most efficient as possible.
Yeah, that is actually brilliant, because so I come in there with a car. I'm the guy from the street. I say, I've got a Toyota, blah blah blah, pushed out 100 kilowatts. I want a 63 mil pipe, and you tell me, no, you can go to a 57. I say, no, but I want a 63. But you've kind of, over the years, you guys have the experience and the wisdom to know what matches with what. So that is quite interesting, because so if I come with my normal road car. Let's say it's a twin cam Toyota, push out 100 kilowatts. The head is stock standard.
Yep.
Just by putting on a set of branches and an exhaust, would that be a good idea? Would it make it more efficient? Would it make it better for power, more torque, better drivability?
Okay, so on the twin cam specifically, that's a bit of an interesting vehicle, because I know you guys are fully aware of the rally industry and the pedigree behind the twin cam motor. There are a bunch of others from the same era that had the same components. But if you remember back in those days, one of the rules with rallying is that you weren't allowed to branch, you had to run the standard manifold. So on a certain number of vehicles from that era, they designed a very, very efficient exhaust manifold. But for production cars on the streets, they just put a non-performance downpipe on the vehicle. So specifically on a twin cam, we would run a performance downpipe, and then we would run a 2-box 50 mil system on a stock vehicle like that. And that'll give you about a 10% power increase, just from fitting a downpipe and free flow system.
That's absolutely amazing, and that's a stock standard engine, not ported the heads, nothing.
Correct.
Now, you know what? This is so interesting, because the more I'm talking to you, the more I realize that every vehicle is vehicle specific. It is not one size fits all.
Correct.
And the guys on the roads kind of think, I'm just going to go and put on something and it's going to make a massive difference. Okay, Byron, I know you got a couple of questions, because that's your forte.
I actually think, it's always interesting, coming from looking at guys on the street and everything like that. And I think most of the time it's actually not about, performance. It's all about the noise. I've seen all kinds of ridiculous pictures and stuff like that of different people putting different kinds of exhausts on, multiple exhausts on, and it's amazing. But one thing I loved about coming to motorsport as well is that lovely with the idle and that burble that you just hear and everything like that. And that of course always brings up, now is bigger better, and of course is car specific. So I don't have really a question as such. It's more just like a statement basically or so, because I think I'm probably one of those people that have a lot to learn still about exhausts and so on coming into racing. And I went up from a car standard exhaust to a stainless steel exhaust, and stainless steel being, of course, now it doesn't rust, and it's got all of its advantages.
Yeah, so there's lots of advantages.
Yeah, Andrea, advantages.
There's lots of advantages. So your heat conducting is different in stainless steel versus mild steel. The sound conducting is different in stainless steel versus mild steel, and then you have the corrosion properties as well. So your gear vehicles, the stainless steel system will sound a specific way as the basis point. And then with our silencers, we would then, customize and tune or tweak the sound, if I can put it that way. But a stainless steel exhaust will have a specific sound as well as the other stuff Byron mentioned.
I remember when, because my race car was, when your dad was still there, at Powerflow. I brought my Gymkhana car in, and I said, it was a 1300 then, and I said,
Okay.
Dick, I don't want to hear the noise of the exhaust. I want to hear the side drafts. That's all I told you, Dad.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that to me was like, to hear the side drafts and the throttles. That is way better than hearing just that loud noise that, and, I didn't even question it. I mean, your dad said, that's what you need. That's why I said, okay, fine, go ahead. So an interesting fact that you brought up now, Andrea, was stainless steel as compared to mild steel. I didn't even know this. I mean, I just thought it's going to be the same. Take us a little bit through that process. I mean, because you guys only do stainless steel. The only thing I knew is stainless steel doesn't corrode. Mild steel does. But I'm just listening to you now, and you're saying there are other properties that's going to play a role as well. Take us through a little bit of that. Just, comparison between the two.
Okay, so the biggest thing, obviously, is going to be your corrosion, especially, I mean, we're all in Cape Town. We are, all of us, near the ocean, regardless of technically how far away from it we live. We're all exposed to it, and corrosion in the Western Cape compared to someone like Gauteng is a massive thing. In Joburg, you can run a master exhaust in your car for 10 years. In Cape Town, it'll last 10 months, for the cheaper versions of it, compared to our ones that we guarantee for 5 years. We expect them, to be honest, to last for much longer than that. The heat conducting properties, I think, are one of the most interesting factors. So the header side of it, and traditionally the downpipe by extension, we would often run that in mild steel. Now, the reason we'll do that with mild steel is that the heating properties and the material is much softer. It can heat up and it can cool down. If you picture, you put your key in the ignition, you start it, you've got fire immediately under your bonnet. So your exhaust headers warm up incredibly fast. You switch the key off and they cool down then quickly as well. And because mild steel is a soft, malleable product, it is able to warm up and cool down effectively without work hardening. So if you put stainless steel in the exact same application, you end up with a work hardened material that will then crack it'll get metal fatigue, it gets heat fatigue. So where we place the stainless steel, where we start our exhaust, is always planned. But headers and downpipes traditionally we'll do in mild steel because it actually lasts. But further away from the heat source, stainless steel doesn't like to get hot. So further away from the heat source, we run the stainless steel, and that's where we have the fantastic results.
That's interesting. So also, if I could add to that and say, because just assume that we did run the headers with stainless steel, it would heat up a lot and obviously cause so much heat under your bonnet that your car will be sucking in, and the intake side, lots of hot air, more than what you actually want, because you want cool air to go in at the intake side, obviously. Okay, that's very interesting. Coming back, yeah. So that is the mild steel and the stainless steel. Now, talking about headers, I mean, there's another contentious issue with headers. In my days, there was just, you only had, if I can remember, it was a Wildcat system. I mean, we were like, we were Wildcat mad and bro speed. There's only two things we knew. And it was just, it was either, it was like 4-into-1 or 4-into-2-into-1. That was the only thing. And it was always an issue. 4-into-1 is better. No, 4-into-2-into-1 is better. Just take us through that process. Is it car specific? Is it, how does it actually work? So now we've determined it's better if it's in mild steel, obviously.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
So when it comes down to the question of 4-into-1 versus 4-into-2-into-1, it comes down entirely to what you want to do to the vehicle, what you want to achieve, I guess is the right way to say it, the vehicle. So a 4-into-1 and a 4-into-2-into-1 will deliver their power differently. They'll deliver their power at different places, and they have specifically different torque curves. So if you look at your dyno sheet, you always want to have a sheet where you've got torque from low down bottom end. That's what's going to get you off the line. If you're drag racing, it's what's going to get you out the corners. If you're circuit racing, Gymkhana, the same thing. Or if you're going to compare it to rallying, it's what's going to make sure that you are shifting up or pulling through the gears. The torque is what actually gets you going. And it depends on where you want that torque to be biggest as to which configuration you go. If you're only looking for top end and you don't care at all about the bottom end, a 4-into-1 header will actually make normally marginally, and I say marginally, 4 kilowatts at the top end, but it will suffer with torque all the way through the bottom and the mid-range. The benefits and the reason that we often put 4-into-2-into-1, and in most cases wherever we can, is that from the moment you turn the key and you first start driving the vehicle, it gives you a boost in your torque, which in my experience is what gets you into and out of trouble, I guess. I guess both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so it's vehicle specific, but it depends what you want out of the vehicle at the end of the day.
I wouldn't say vehicle specific. I would say what you're doing with the vehicle. So, for example, if you're drag racing, you're going to pull away from the line and you're going to be almost on the limit. You're going to drop the clutch. You've got smoke off your tires from the get-go. So your revs are very high. So in that instance, if your revs are always going to stay high, sort of in the top, I would say 1.5, 2,000 RPM. That's the only type of driving you do with the vehicle. 1 to 1 would probably be better suited. If you're ever going to drive your vehicle under different circumstances, to work it back, track racing, that sort of thing, you'll benefit more from having a torque at the bottom end and the mid-range, because you're not driving it against the rev limiter all the time.
Right. Okay. And you guys make headers as well, I would assume.
We don't make many of our own headers. We've always stocked the Bro Speed headers back in the day. And as when Bro Speed shut down, we followed the jigs as they've gone to the different manufacturers. So we're still using the same product, but it's now manufactured by different suppliers as they go. But we've always held true, because Bro Speed always had the best research and development.
Yes.
And in terms of our personal dyno testing, because at one time we had a dyno in our workshop, tested all the branches we could get our hands on, retested all the systems, everything like that. We did a lot of R&D in-house, and the Bro Speed consistently made the best power. So that's what we always tried to follow.
Okay, cool. So a guy comes into your shop and he wants a header. You can, it's either in stock, or you can get it for him quickly. You can put it on, and you can determine what he wants to do with the vehicle, and Bob's your uncle. Okay, it's quite interesting. Now, coming back to so Biden, you heard all the stuff about the 4x2x1 and the 4x1. I don't know if you were still there, or you ran away to have some supper or something.
What I could have heard, yes. I wish. There's a bit of connection problems on this side and everything like that. So I'm hopefully back full time.
Well, we can hear you, but we can't see you.
You can't see me.
I can see
okay, well,
can you see him?
Lucky viewers, I can tell you that much.
Oh, okay, well, maybe I can't see him. Okay, maybe it's me actually. I don't know. Okay, okay. So now coming. So I remember a couple of years ago, I was speaking to somebody, and he was saying, okay, so there's different technology. So what they do with the headers now, let's say they started with a certain width of pipe. Just, I don't know, whatever. Just say it was a 1300, for example. So they started off with I'm just going to give an example, a 50 mil pipe. Then they go to a 45 and go back to a 50 in the header, actually. I don't know if you have had any experience with that, or does that, I don't even know if it works. I was just listening to this guy talk, and I thought, that's quite interesting. I've never heard of that before.
So traditionally, in terms of your header sizes, you've got what we call primary pipes, which is the ones that obviously are right up at the top, but secondary pipes, which is your connecting pipe, or pipes, depending on what configuration you're running. But traditionally, you'll have a smaller primary. So the first part off the engine will be smaller, and then it'll go to a bigger secondary. On the 4x2x1, it's very simple. Why? Because you're going from 4 pipes into 2 pipes. So you go from 2 fairly thin pipes to 1 thick, and from those 2 thick pipes again, 1 step up when you go back down to 1. But the idea of that step up and starting smaller and going bigger is to do that effect I said about earlier, which is if you take your hose pipe and you squeeze it a little bit, your water comes out a bit faster. And the idea is to try and get the gas away from the engine. And if you restrict it, and I don't like using the word restrict, but I think that's in effect what happens is that if you restrict it slightly at the top, it actually accelerates the speed of the gas, and that's one of the ways that you get your power from it.
So that I remember now. You said step down and step up. I remember those words. The guy, he was telling me, so they step it down and step it up again. Okay, so that takes care. Is there anything else of the headers that you want to talk about that you think it's interesting or important as far as the headers are concerned?
I think in terms of modern vehicles, that there are lots of them that are on our turbocharged, that becomes obsolete, because now with a turbo on the vehicle, the exhaust basically starts from where the turbo is backwards. So headers then become non-existent, because you've got your engine, you've got your turbo manifold, you've got your turbo. So these days and going forwards, I think we're going to see a lot more downpipes coming to sort of the mainstream, if I can put it that way. We already have that on kind of, Golf 6, Golf 5, Golf GTIs, that kind of thing. It's, that's what you do is you do downpipes. So I think there's a wave coming, making, the downpipes or the new branches, if I can put it that way.
Okay, so the downpipes. Okay, I'm an NA person, so I don't know much about turbos. I mean, I'm still old school, so Okay, so
yeah, well, you're still with your individual throttles there.
No. I'm before that. I'm still. Well, I was with side drafts up until very recently. I must be honest with you. I mean,
Nothing
it was
wrong with that at
40s.
all.
It was 40s, and I went to 800, and it was 45s. And I thought, okay, now we got to do something different. And I put throttles on eventually, but I mean that's as far as it goes. I mean, it's like a completely new thing for me, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
But anyhow, but to come to the turbo side, okay, so the downpipes, there's obviously another different ball game again with a downpipe. So how does that make a difference to your performance in the size, or where does it all fit in with a turbo car?
Okay, so this is the first time that bigger is better. This is the first time that we get to that point where bigger is better. And basically on turbo vehicles, traditionally what the manufacturers do is that they have this nice big turbo outlets, and then for whatever reason they put a little skinny pipe as the downpipe onto it. So what you have is that you've got your exhaust gases turning your turbo that's coming through this big fat turbo that's trying to make lots of power, but a skinny little downpipe. So downpipes on turbo vehicles are an exceptionally effective way of making a more powerful vehicle and making it run more efficiently. And simply what you want to do is you want to match up your exhaust pipe diameter with your turbo outlet size. If you want to go bigger, you can. You achieve nothing other than spend more money because it's more expensive to go bigger. But if you go smaller than your turbo outlet size, you're not running as efficiently as possible. So matching up to the turbo outlet size is what we try and do on all of the turbo vehicles that are coming through. So everything from your little GTIs or TSIs, like with Fiesta EcoBoost, even a little one EcoBoost. You want to try and have a nice thick downpipe on it because that gets the gases away from the turbo as effectively as it can. Compared to an NA vehicle where you want a skinny little pipe to accelerate the gases, with a turbo vehicle you want a nice thick pipe just to facilitate the transportation of the gases that are already, because the turbo moves very rapidly.
Absolutely. Byron, you're very quiet there, Byron. You normally have a million questions. Come on, Byron. Where are you?
I think we should play a video, actually. I like playing videos, so I think we should move into that. So enjoy this one.
Cool.
We've got a pink golf.
There are a lot of children that come up to me, I didn't know that girls could race. It's so cool to see you on the racetrack. I think that's one step that we're slowly changing. Not just men's opinion, because that's an opinion that's been around for ages, but women's opinion of themselves.
Absolutely. An opinion that is kind of out there, where people think racing is just for boys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely not true. I'm not the only person who as a female has gone racing, and I think my motto in life is try it. Jump in with both feet. If you like it, you like it. If you don't. Regardless of what it is. And it's been great
Absolutely.
for me to experience that going through, not just my racing, but my professional life now as well.
Absolutely. It's actually quite interesting. We're going to maybe divert a little bit from exhaust here, but it's interesting your knowledge on, well, specifically we talk about exhaust now, is so vast. I mean, does that kind of tie in with your love for motorsport or cars, or was it just that you were kind of there?
A little bit of both. Growing up, it was a great treat for me to spend time with my dad. He worked all the time, I think, as most dads do, providing for their families. So for me to spend a Saturday morning at the workshop with him was an absolute treat. Not only did I get to spend some time with him, he put me to work. I would make tea and coffee as a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old. I was the one that made tea and coffee for customers on a Saturday. So I was in and around. Back then I would answer the phone and say, "Park, good day, could you hold please?" And that was about the extent of it. And then going forwards from that, my personal love for speed and for and for driving and competing, obviously took over from that point. But we tend to joke in my family that I've got 2 degrees, one for BSc, and the other one is a QB. I don't know if you boys want to take a guess on what either of those stand for.
Well, I didn't hear it, so I'll just run it by me again.
So the one is a BSc, is in Bravo. Goodness,
Yeah,
BSc,
BSc.
Bravo Sierra Charlie.
Oh, BSc, okay.
C for Charlie.
Yeah.
So in my family, that stands for behind shop counter.
Okay, right. Yes. Okay.
So
I'm
growing
laughing
up
because,
in and around and spending a lot of time there. And then the second one was a QBE. QBE, which in my family we say it's a qualified by experience. Sometimes you study and sometimes you do, and both I think are equivalent ways of getting knowledge and gaining knowledge and being able to work with things. Yeah, it's not all about the books and the degrees. There's a lot of stuff you can do just if you set your mind to it.
You know, it's kind of very interesting because in my family they don't want me to get around the youngsters because I've got the same philosophy. I'm not against university degrees or college degrees or anything. I'm just saying there's many other ways of educating yourself. And BSc, trust
absolutely.
me.
It all has.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the BSc I know because we come from I'm kind of half Indian and half something else. I'm not sure what the other half is. So we kind of grew up. My dad had supermarkets and BSc. That was my degree behind shop counter. So it's quite interesting to just know there are other people out there that think the same way. I'm actually quite excited now about it. I must tell you. Yeah. Okay. We're gonna go.
I think what happens is if you go back, that is the old school way of things. For me, read up.
Byron?
Oh, I lost Byron there.
All right.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, I was busy in the middle of. Sorry, guys, my Wi-Fi looks to be all over the place. But I think I always go. That's the old school way of doing things. It's the school of hard knocks. It's the school of experience and so on like that. And what I'm actually pleased to see in motorsport today is not only do we have more women being represented, not only from a driving point of view. Let's take for instance the W Series, but also as well in engineering, which I love a lot as well, because what happens is, you have, women that are, designing, you have your women are race engineers as well. And I think what happens is it takes that whole thing that, is it a man's sport? I don't want to say that anymore. I want to say that it's a sport that can be, anybody can be involved in it. And we can all be on the same level. And that, to me, that just makes me excited because that's the new way of doing things.
Absolutely. Andrea and Bate, we just actually, you can see the sweater that I'm wearing, it says YQ Holdings on here. But YQ Holdings have started a NPO called YQ for Hope. And it's predominantly, they started a bursary fund via motorsport. So in other words, the gymkhanas that we do funds bursaries for the youth that want to study something in the motor-related industry. That is so brilliant because that's exactly what we're talking about here. I mean, who knows? Somebody could come to Powerflow when he's done with his college and he can come and do his internship there. That's really what motorsport is about. Anyhow, we digressing here now. Coming back to the exhausts. Okay, so we're done with the header part and we're going to go on to the actual, just a question on the exhaust. So I see some guys, they put the headers on and then the pipe goes like kind of over the cross member and makes a couple of squiggles and then goes out of the back, the two boxes and stuff. So is a direct pipe as straight as possible better instead of making all the squiggles? Or is there a difference? Is there not a difference? Before we get to the other questions there, just on that.
Okay, so when it comes to the bends, yes, the less bends you have and the wider the bends, the faster the gas is going to flow. If I can use an analogy that works in my head, if you're playing with some water, you make a little bit of stream. Every time your water goes around a corner, it creates a bit of turbulence. When it comes to road cars and passenger vehicles, is it enough to affect any real felt change, having it done the way that the factory brings it out and following that path, or having it done straight? And the answer is no, it's not enough of a performance issue, or a drawback, I should say, to actually be felt on a dyno. For example, you would need to run it on a specific dyno, not driving it. You certainly wouldn't feel that with the seat of your pants, put it that way. But if the bends are terribly sharp, so we see that a lot when people have kinked an exhaust after, they've reversed into a pavement, or someone's reversed into them or something like that, had a little accident and the pipe is kinked, and it's a very sharp bend, then obviously your gas can't get through as efficiently as it should, and that'll be a definite negative drawback. But your bends are important. Also, on the inside of your bends, you'd want it to look, we say in the industry, like crinkle cut chips. You want it to be a nice smooth bend on the inside, because that's going to disturb and create as little turbulence as we want. And that's how come we run the exhaust as we do, with as neater bends, with as little deformation as we can make. Again, it's not something that's going to be massive felt between a good one and a bad one. Depends on how bad one is, if I can put it like that. But generally, if you're doing the bending correctly, you're doing it correctly.
Okay. I remember in the old days we used to put sand in the pipe. I don't know if you can remember this, Andrea. I don't know how old you are, but I'm quite old. So I remember we used to put sand. Well, not me, but we used to put sand in the pipe and heat it up and then bend it. I mean, obviously the technology has changed quite a bit. You guys obviously have the bending machines that makes it much neater and easier and quicker as well to do.
Correct. So when it comes to the bigger diameters, so when we do a 63 mil exhaust, for example, we still do that. We do exactly that. We put a piece of a block of wood in the end, we knock it in, fill it with sand, we make sure there's no air bubbles, we knock another piece of wood in, we make that pipe as solid as we possibly can, because we want as little deformation as possible. Not just because of efficiency, but we also want it to look good what we're doing. We're not just putting something on your vehicle that you're never going to see again. We want you to be able to be proud of it. We want to be proud of it. We want you to be able to be proud of it as well. So it's not just aesthetics, although that is a very small part of it.
And that is what makes, well, our very personal experience with you guys, because obviously I've been using you guys whenever I can for my race car and stuff. And if you look at the difference in workmanship, I mean, I can categorically tell you that it's brilliant, really. I mean, and I'm kind of finicky about my race car, so it's quite important. And I mean, it's as a result of the way that you were taught, because your dad was like that.
Right.
I mean, I remember from the race days, those years. I mean, when like I said, he was racing the lift pack still. I mean, I used to admire that car, and I used to look at this car, and I thought, one day I'm going to have a car as fast as this. I mean, it was always, like when you're young, you always imagine that, and but he was a perfectionist. And that carried over into his business, and that's the result of 28 years later.
Absolutely. Correct. So that's exactly what we strive for every day. We want our customers to be able to look at what we produce, and we want them to be just as proud as us. And I want whatever product goes out of my workshop, I want it to be good enough that I'd be very proud to have it on my own vehicle. And that's absolutely, as you say, that comes straight from my dad. He's brought me up like that all the time. All my race cars have also been the same thing, having it neat and tidy as well as functional. But absolutely, that's the backbone is the workmanship, the neatness, and the reliability. That's the backbone my dad has built, and it's the torch that I've not inherited to a certain extent, but that's the torch that I intend to carry on.
And make it better, I would assume.
Always.
Yeah, you know what?
I'm very
absolutely.
competitive, so there's always that edge that I'm trying to do something a little bit better.
But us old toppies, we got to learn that the young people have quite a bit of knowledge as well. Sometimes you kind of take it for granted that you're older, you know everything, but it's not that, because like I've got younger children. Obviously, my children are younger than me, but I've got a young son that's he's 25 or 24. And sometimes when we work together, he'll say something, and before I answer, I actually think, but that's actually a very good idea, because it actually is brilliant. And I mean, I don't think of it. I'm double his age, and yeah, so it's quite interesting. So we're looking forward to the next, taking that business to the next level now, Andrea. And I know you're going to do it because you have the capabilities of doing it. Yeah. Okay, getting back to the exhaust thing. Byron, any questions you want to ask? I've got a couple of more.
Well, I think go for it, Abdul, because you look to be quite ahead of me on this. I'm just a student here, listening to all this information coming in at quite a rapid rate. So please, age before beauty.
and that's kind of what the show is. That's kind of what the show is about. You know, we want people to be able to listen to the show and go away with information that's useful and that they can use. You know, they can just come to Powerflow and say, "This is what I've learned. This is what I want." That's what's important, because you get so much different information out there, and people get ripped off. Big time. They spend a lot of money, and all the years it's a lot of noise, and the car's going nowhere. So that's very interesting. Okay, so we covered the bins. That was very interesting. Now the boxes. I mean, you gotta just a quick just a digression. So I remember when I raced my 1300, that car I bought from Toyota Motorsport, and I remember categorically that exhaust came out. So the Toyota's exhaust was in the front. Yeah, it comes out in the front, and that exhaust went straight down with a little box to the front wheel. So there's a very short pipe from the header, header, right? And I could never figure out why it was so short. Would that make a difference as compared to if that thing was quite long to the back or something?
Yes and no. So specifically when it comes to length, there is an optimal length for every engine. A lot of the time what we are forced to work with is the manufacturers and how they design the vehicle. So sometimes that's the framework within which we work. My dad did some interesting experiments before he was a Powerflow, actually back when he was racing bikes, so in the late 70s. And he took a pipe on his little two-stroke, and they extended the pipe about 300 mils off the back of the motorbike. And what they did is that they looked to see the color change, because your exhaust, as it heats up specifically the first time, it'll actually change color. And they cut the end of the color change. And once they've done that, as the or whatever you want to call it, but the change, they then sort of play around with it. So you've got an option with length versus diameter, and you can contribute to your performance and your limitations that you're dealing with the framework by going different pipe diameters. Traditionally, something like you're explaining will come down to noise regulations these days, because there's noise regulations everywhere. We have them on the street cars, we have them at Killarney noise regulations as well, and that kind of design, although it's possibly very effective. I haven't done a test on the dyno with that configuration on a conventional one like that way. But noise restrictions now would completely outlaw that, certainly here at Killarney.
Yes.
But then we would start playing around with the pipe diameter, which is what he did back in those days. So even before he had Powerflow, he was already playing with exhaust. I guess we should have seen the right before.
You're 100% correct, because I remember that car it wasn't very quiet, it made a huge noise. And when the noise regulations came in, I had to change the exhaust to a full length exhaust, from like a normal road car, and obviously the diameter was now thicker. Okay, so now the boxes. So we used to call it silencers, right? So is that what it really is? Correct. Is it just to silence the noise? If there was no boxes on the car, one straight pipe from the header right to the back, let's say a 57 mil pipe or 63, whatever size you guys put on, it would make a huge noise. Am I correct?
It would make a big noise. So it's very interesting. It depends on the design of the silencer as to whether it's going to affect your performance negatively or whether it's going to affect your performance positively, or whether it's going to have no effect. So there are different design silencers that will give you different results. The other thing is your placement of silencers. We've done a huge amount of it.
Okay, your placement of silence. Okay, just a question. If there were no silencers on, if there were no silencers on, would it damage your engine?
It wouldn't damage the engine, no, but you wouldn't be making the most power.
You wouldn't be making the?
the best power.
Okay, right. So the boxes. So even where you put the boxes in the system makes a difference.
Correct. So what happens with the silencers, specifically, I'm talking now with free flow silencers. I'm not going to talk about chambered boxes, which we know take performance away from vehicles. I'm specifically going to talk about the silencers that we use, which are free flow silencers. What they create, if you can picture the gases going down the pipe, when it gets to the silencer, it can then expand into the silencer because now you have a bigger volume to fill. And what that does is it creates a little bit of interference. And depending on where you put that interference, you can actually make a difference to your power delivery, to your overall amount of power, which is something that we've been working on a lot. We did work on a lot, specifically when I was track racing, because if I could get 3 Newton meters better than before on the track car, it was something to write home about. And it was something that everyone else didn't have. So traditionally, on a normally aspirated vehicle, now we're talking just a normally aspirated vehicle, nothing turbo, nothing supercharged. On a normally aspirated vehicle, you want to break the sound wave, is what we call it. We want to cause some sort of small disruption at the front of the vehicle, which actually boosts the torque. Kilowatt stays the same, but it does boost the torque. Your rear silencer is then sort of your main sound controller. So your front one is on the vehicle specifically for power. Your rear one is on the vehicle to then get your noise to the right kind of noise.
Okay, I'm kind of that opinion still, because people think, my car push out 140 kilowatts and your car push out 130, so I'm obviously faster than you. I'm not really. Yes, kilowatts important, but to me the Newton meters is more important, because if you have the torque from low down, you can do a lot. You can do much more with that torque than what you can do with the kilowatts. So that's kind of very, very interesting there. So. Okay, so if you just had one box at the back, that would be detrimental to your performance then, just the silencer for the noise.
Well, I wouldn't say detrimental to your performance. I would say it's not as efficient as it could be. So there's a fine line, and I wouldn't go into the negative. It's not going to cause your vehicle to have any, lack of, it's not going to damage your motor or anything like that. It's just that you could have more. You're at an 8 out of 10, but you could be a 10 out of 10. So I always want to be 10 out of 10.
Absolutely. No, and the way I know you, it's 11 out of 10.
If there's one last Newton meter, then I want it. If we're going to get technical, then we at least have to say 15.
Yeah, well. Okay. Now that the placement of the boxes, are they also vehicle specific or kind of across the board?
It's going to depend. There's a general rule that would then be marginally vehicle specific based on the undercarriage of the vehicle. So based on the space that we're able to play with. So traditionally we're looking at a certain sort of length away from where the header collector comes in. But then you start playing with the game of the closer you are to the collector, the hotter the gases are, because you've now got your 2 pipes joining into one, which is hotter than your single one. So the closer you are to the headers, the hotter the exhaust is. So the shorter the lifespan of whatever components there. So you want to be, for lifespan of the silencer, you want to be as far away from the heat source as possible, but you also don't want to be too far away, because you want that extra torque that the front box is.
Okay. Byron, you've been very quiet tonight. I'm actually concerned about you. Are you okay? Byron is normally one that has all the questions.
No, I'm all right. It's just Wi-Fi, as always. Wi-Fi is just making me very robotic in my movements. So I think time for just another quick vid.
Okay, how much time do we have left? Sure.
Cool, calm.
What can I say? I'm so glad that car's got a rev limiter on. And car stays in the limiter.
Yeah, when it comes down to it, sometimes you lose more time changing gears than just running into the limiter for a little bit of the time. And also, I'm a petrol head at heart, let's be honest. It sounds quite nice when it runs into the limiter, so why not?
What can I say? What is it car rev to 7.5 or 7 or 8 or 9? I don't know, I'm not sure.
I think it revved to about 7.8. So just short of 8,000 was that's the vehicle.
So sweet.
Correctly. It's been a while since I drove that one. Yeah.
So sweet, so sweet. You know, we have a guy that drives the Gymkhana with us. He's got this Nissan 1400 bakkie with a twin cam, the 4 AGE motor.
Okay,
He revs that thing. He revs that thing to I'm sure it's 9 something, because he kind of does the whole Gymkhana in first gear, and I'm kind of sitting there and just thinking, when is that piston gonna come through that block? Like, Biden, you know, Anton, I mean, that he continuously drives all the time. It just revs to, I don't know, beyond where it's supposed to go, and the thing just goes on, and it's crazy. It's you know, just the way you drive as well. It's crazy. I mean, like, it's that limiter.
There's absolutely a cool factor with the limiter. 100%.
Oh, what can I say? Okay, so exhaust. So we kind of covered the diameters we want to speak about. So, okay, so I mean, where does it start? What is kind of when the car comes in, a normal, let's say a road car comes in. Okay, so what is a normal, like just the normal, any car, Golf, Toyota, whatever other cars you guys work on? It comes with a factory exhaust, a certain diameter. So how do you determine the thickness? Okay, your length is kind of determined because it's a road car. You can't kind of change that, right? But you can change the diameter. So the guy doesn't want headers on it, doesn't want a branch on it. He just wants another exhaust. Does it make a difference? Just change the diameter of the exhaust, or is it, you know, and the boxes and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So with all vehicles come from whichever respective factory they come from with chambered silencers. So that is not the most efficient silence. It's the most efficient in terms of sound to keep the vehicle quiet. It's not the most efficient in terms of performance. So our silencers are all free flow boxes. What that means is if you hold it up to the light, or you don't need to hold up the light either, but you can see straight through from one side to the other. There's a perforated pipe that either goes straight through or it might have a bend inside the box. But it's a perforated pipe that goes through, which means that your travel of your gases is unobstructed. The chambered silencer has a series of baffles inside it, and the gas is then forced to travel and traverse through. I use the word maze. It's not a maze because there's a definite path that it travels, but it goes through a bunch of chambers. And if I get back to my water analogy from earlier, every time your water has to go around a corner, it actually slows down. So you want it to go out as efficiently as possible. So on some vehicles, we actually don't increase the diameter of the exhaust system, but by changing the silencers to free flow silencers. So we might put the same diameter exhaust, but with it being free flow silencers, not chambered silencers. The combination of that is what gives you your benefit. Traditionally, though, we do normally go one size up, is sort of, I wouldn't say rule of thumb, but that's very common to go one size up than what's on the vehicle. But in some instances, the vehicle has a thick exhaust but chambered silencers, which means it's efficient. It's inefficient on two fronts, not just one front.
Yeah.
So we might go marginally smaller, but with the free flow silencers, it more than makes up for the diameter.
Yes. So okay. So with the silencers, the chambered silence obviously restrict your performance on the car, obviously. So now that's without the headers on. That's just the exhaust. And obviously, you put the headers on, it's going to make a bigger, to be more efficient. Coming to the fuel efficiency, by changing your exhaust from a standard factory exhaust, we put we put two free flow boxes on. We change the diameter. Does it make it more fuel efficient, or can it? Will it? Is it a good idea?
Any improvements in inefficiency by necessity means power. So a lot of people come in and they say, look, I don't want extra power, I just want fuel efficiency. But if I can break it down on paper, if your car's power output is increased, so if you have more power, it means you don't have to accelerate as hard to go the same speed as you used to. Therefore, an increase of power equals an increase in efficiency. Now, the beautiful thing about the beautiful thing about exhaust systems and efficiency and fuel efficiency is that humans actually control it. And your car's fuel efficiency is completely 100% mostly determined by how much lead you've got in your right foot. What I always say to people is I can guarantee you the performance increase, but you can either get to where you're going faster or you can save fuel, but you can't do them both at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the efficiency is guaranteed, and the potential is absolutely guaranteed. It's just a question of whether you are able to make use of the benefits or whether you have a nice exhaust, it drives a bit stronger, it sounds a bit nicer, so you end up sometimes driving off the sound. For me personally, on my last road car, it took me about a month and a half to calm down and to drive it like an actual road car. And I saw a drastic reduction in my fuel usage. But for that first part that I had the exhaust on, I drove it like a scully, because what else do you do when you have a nice exhaust that looks good and sounds good and makes the car feel faster? Is you drive off the sound. And I was crying about the fuel consumption, but I knew it was me. Once I calmed down, like I said, now my car's never been more efficient. And I've got the choice now. I can either get to where I'm going faster or I can use hardly any fuel on my.
Yeah. But I guess it's human nature, because the sound is like really cool, and obviously the foot gets heavier because you want to hear the sound. So yeah, but I guess, like you said, after a month, you realize that it's okay. I just got to drive cool and calm, because the price of petrol is not cheap anymore. Like you kind of get to that realization. Yeah, it's
I'm a slow learner. Most people don't take that long, to be honest.
Okay, so I mean it's a good thing. Okay, now. You get these cars, and I hear it specifically on BMWs, I don't know, or some sports cars, where they make these funny noises, like, I don't know what you call it, like, it sounds like gunshots or something. I mean, is that exhaust based, or is it, what is that? I mean, like,
okay, so I've been told by the people that are cool, that is called pops and bangs, and basically it's backfires. To explain how the exhaust plays a role in that is fairly simple. The exhaust by nature is your car's drain pipe. And I always say to people, what comes out of your kitchen sink's drain pipe is only what you put into the kitchen sink. In the same way, your exhaust, we can only take the performance and the sound that your engine makes, and we can tweak it a little bit, but we can't create anything inside the exhaust. So your pops and bangs is something that is created. Either some vehicles do it naturally, but what it is it's a small backfire. So it's a little bit of unburned fuel getting into the exhaust that then ignites. So it either does it naturally, or you can load a software map onto the vehicle that specifically does that on liftoff, which is one of probably the most popular things these days, because it does sound pretty darn awesome. What the exhaust then can do is, if you have a very quiet exhaust, it will also muffle your backfires. If you have a very loud exhaust, it will let that sound through. So then either hamper that or not hamper that, but it can't create it.
That's interesting. Okay, I'm not a pop and bang person, because it kind of gives me a skrik every time I hear it. Like, Pardon. Maybe you must take that. That comment. Is a comment that came in there from Juanita.
Yes, Juanita Wilmans, and she says, "Great to know you are alive, thumping it, and enjoy your machines." Lovely comment there from Juanita. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm talking about Andrea. Yeah.
I must say that pops and bangs on my daily car that I drive to work and back is not something that I'm desperate to have, if I can put it that way. But I did borrow a friend of mine's car the other day. It was an Audi RS4, the V8, and that had pops and bangs map loaded onto it. Yeah, and it was a fantastic sound that it made every time I lifted my foot off the throttle. So what I ended up doing is I drove it around for 2 days. I did exactly what I did when I first put my exhaust in my car. I put my foot flat. I would then get up a little bit of speed. I'd lift it off and it would pop and bang. And I had a huge amount of fun, like a kid on Christmas morning, playing with it, because I think everything like that has a place. You can't be serious all the time.
Absolutely. I must tell you guys a little joke about what happened at the Gymkhana one. So we had the Gymkhana at Killarney. I think it was, I don't know, I can't remember when. It was I think in this year still. So one of the guys rocked up there with a, I don't know, it was a Nissan with a 2JZ motor in, right? It was a kind of a drift car with this pops and bangs. But we were not supposed to do any testing. We were not allowed to start before 9 o'clock, and I completely forgot. So like this 8:30 in the morning, this car makes, I mean, you know the sound this thing makes, right? So we get a call from somebody, the powers that be at Killarney. The people are complaining that this car is backfiring and it's going to blow its engine up. And I knew exactly what it was, and I completely forgot. It was so hilarious because this thing, I mean, you know how loud it is. And at this 8:30 in the morning at Killarney on a Saturday morning, it makes a massive noise. And it's quiet, and I'm sure they woke up everybody in Table View, and it was like, okay. So it was quite interesting. We obviously learned our lesson from that. Okay. Catalytic converters. I mean, there's such a big thing now that I believe people's catalytic converters are getting stolen. I mean, I really can't believe. I don't know if it's true. I mean, I kind of see it on Facebook.
I've heard about that, yeah.
I mean, what is the function of a catalytic converter? And does it hamper your performance positively, negatively? And why in heaven's name are they stealing these things? I mean, what is it really? I mean, what are you doing with it?
Okay, so I think I'll start with the performance question. So a catalytic converter is a very fine honeycomb structure. And what it does is that the gases go into it, it goes through the membrane. If you know a honeycomb, whatever's open on one side is closed on the other. And such is the same for a catalytic converter. So it's a very fine honeycomb structure. The gas goes through the membrane, and then your exhaust gases are converted into something that is slightly less harmful for the environment than if it gets out. Now, if you remember to what we said earlier about efficiency and the speed of the exhaust gases, it stands to reason that it is the fact that anytime you take a catalytic converter off a vehicle will increase the efficiency of the gas flow, which will increase your power. So the short answer to catalytic converters is absolutely, as far as performance and efficiency goes, take it off as soon as you can, really. It is my personal opinion, what I do in my personal vehicles. Because I'm all about funnily enough, my road cars, it's all about the fuel efficiency. The track cars are completely all about the sound and everything else, but my road car, I want it to be as efficient as possible. And to do that's what my family thinks is a big joke, because I'm always telling them, just don't accelerate so hard. We've got to coast. We've got to make sure we get good fuel economy, which is very funny coming from the racing driver in the family.
It's wisdom.
I like to think so.
Yeah.
In terms of the value of a catalytic converter, so inside a catalytic converter, you have a number of semi-precious metals. One of them is some platinum. You get a whole bunch of other ones, but that's the one that everyone knows the name of. Put it that way. We can't extract it in this country, but if you export it to China, they can extract it and they can then harvest the platinum out of it. And that's what everyone is fighting for at the moment, and that's why catalytic converters do get stolen off vehicles sometimes. We started to see it a little bit. But that's how come there's some value of a catalytic converter.
It's crazy. I mean, who would ever think someone's going to steal a catalytic converter? I mean, like, can you actually believe that? Like, really? Okay, so
I certainly wouldn't have thought anyone would steal any off a car, but apparently it's happening these days.
Yeah, well, what can I say? So in other words, the catalytic converter, well, we don't have any regulations as far as the environmental regulations are concerned regarding the catalytic converters in South Africa yet. So it would be better to decat your vehicle then, because it'll just make it better, I would assume.
Absolutely. So in terms of efficiency, you definitely want it off in terms of gas flow. However, the technology of catalytic converters is evolving and it's changing every year that goes past. So it does bring with it a whole set of other challenges. And one of them is surrounding the oxygen sensors and your engine management and how it controls and how it reads. Some vehicles you can take a catalytic converter off and do absolutely nothing and the vehicle runs fine. Some vehicles require certain hardware fittings so that your oxygen sensor doesn't trigger an error and doesn't give you issues. Some vehicles, your software map updates in conjunction with the hardware of the catch removal, because the newest sensors are actually measuring the hydrocarbons in the exhaust gases. which is much more efficient, and it's not able to tricked with some of the components that we've been using on the older generations. Like easier.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so obviously it's a continual evolving. I mean, it evolves all the time because technology evolves all the time. So I have one final question. This is actually a crazy question. So we are actually moving into the EV vehicles. I can't even hear these things. It actually makes me sick. I'm like, really? I'm like, how do you see something that you can't hear? I mean, how do you race a car that you can't hear? I mean, that doesn't make sense to me at all. Just, I don't know. There's no exhaust in that car, obviously. What do you think is the future?
Thankfully for us, I think that future is so far away that I don't think myself nor the next 2 generations are going to have to worry about it. So I think while the sun shines and while we still have big V8s and V6s and straight 6s and all the other configurations of engines, we're still going to make hay while the sun shines as petrol heads. It's obviously it's not going to require an exhaust on an electric vehicle, but you're also not going to get the same kind of drive. Personally, I struggle a lot with that kind of thing because I've grown up listening to the RPM of the vehicle, and that's how, it's one of the things that I use to determine where I am and what I'm doing. It's one of my physical location cues. So hats off to the people that are racing electric vehicles, because it's certainly a completely different definition.
I think what you should actually maybe invent when you have some time at Powerflow is on an electric vehicle, maybe that you should put an exhaust that makes a sound, so we just think it's there's a noise. I mean, that's like kind of something. I mean, like really. I mean, I really, it's like.
So there are systems currently in a lot of modern vehicles where they either channel air into your cabin through certain ducts that they create some sort of noise, or some vehicles actually have it through the entertainment system. That it makes the vehicle able to hear something. I've had you also get some very fancy exhaust systems that will plug into electronics and it will then play sound through your car's stereo. But that is already being done. The easiest way not the easiest, but the least technological way, I think, in terms of electronics is when they create the ducting for the air coming into the car to give you that sound, which I think is pretty phenomenal, although a bit cheating.
Yeah, I think that new GR Yaris, the GR Yaris, a little 3-cylinder 1600 turbocharged little thing. I think it does that with the sound. They kind of play the sound through I don't know how they do it. I don't know. It just gets into your system somehow. I can't even ever imagine what it will do to you sitting there, and like the sound's like really right through you. It's absolutely awesome. I mean, I'm excited just talking about it. I mean, what can I say? Okay, I think we are kind of 10 minutes over time, Baden, but it's so interesting. We can go on forever. But I mean, no, we can't go on forever because Baden must still have supper and Andrea must have supper, and I don't know. I'm not even going to have supper. But anyhow, Baden, do you have anything you want to just add to our discussion or ask or anything?
I actually had a thought now. I heard something. I think I was watching, I don't know what it was, on YouTube or something. I think it was regarding the Nissan Leaf, seeing that we are talking about alternative types of vehicles, that because there was no exhaust, of course, there was no noise coming from an exhaust because there was no exhaust. They had to redesign the mirrors, because what happens is the sound of the wind going over the mirrors made such a terrible noise that they had to, because that would usually be drowned out by the sound of the engine, but now they had to redesign that. So that's what I was thinking about now. So just, I don't know. And for me, mimicking sounds and recording sounds, it's like it falls under the same category as people putting turbo whistles on the exhausts. It's pointless.
Yeah, imagine trying to
That's
convince our generation. Well, like, I can't even imagine this. I'm not gonna go there. Just leave it.
No, we leave it to that.
Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it there. Andrea, do you have anything else that you would love to share with us? Because it's been so fascinating talking to you. I mean, like, really, I'm sitting here and thought to myself, I've never all my years at school and all my years at university, I've never learned so much about exhaust that I learned in 1 hour. It's unbelievable. Like, really, so much good information out there. And anything else, just before you want to answer that, just maybe, Baden, we should ask the audience out there, the viewers, maybe what is the next topic they want us to discuss? I mean, because this was extremely interesting, like really. So maybe we can just put it out there, Biden, ask the guys, send Biden an email, or I mean, put it on our Facebook page or something. Or
put
just
on Facebook. Tell us, what do you want to hear about? There's so many topics out there, very technical topics, non-technical topics, all kinds of topics with regards to motorsport, motoring, to put out there. So what happens is, yes, please feel free on Witzenberg, if you're watching one of our shows as well, on YouTube or Facebook, leave a comment, and we'll definitely consider it.
Yeah, and don't forget to mention the sponsors, Biden, when we're done, because I always forget. So Andrea, coming back to you, because, I mean, you've got so much knowledge. I mean, I don't know how much knowledge, I mean, where you put all this knowledge. I mean, you must have a very, very big brain, I mean, to store all these things that you have. And maybe is there anything else that we kind of didn't touch that the people out there should know about, anything else? I mean, they know where you guys are. I mean, you obviously insulted over you, Powerflow, the numbers all over. You guys can check it on Facebook. But, I mean, what else can you share with us?
I think exhaust technology, the basics of it, we know what the basics are, but there are different tweaks on every different vehicle. And what we strive to do is, as I said in the beginning, is to create the right recipe for whatever vehicle comes in. So you'll often hear me, if you're ever at the workshop, you'll often hear me ask someone, okay, so are you going to have you modified it? What modifications are you doing? And I would say that the exhaust is something on your car where you can get power and efficiency for free. So for me, it's the easiest way to get performance from the vehicle. And obviously, I'm an exhaust person, so I'm going to say it's exhaust. But to me, it's a no-brainer to do something, even on a stock standard road car that your mom drives. It doesn't have to be loud, but to make it more efficient with fuel prices, what they are, is obviously something that most people strive for. And if you can get that efficiency without making the vehicle louder, that's definitely something that I think, I don't know, I would assume most of our listeners are probably petrol heads, but we can help their mums as well with their vehicles in terms of fuel economy. And the correlation between performance and fuel economy, I would say, is something not to forget. You do always want more power, because used in the correct manner, that's going to create your better fuel economy.
Okay. So, it was really, really, really awesome chatting to you tonight. I mean, it was absolutely brilliant. I mean, I learned so much, and I'm sure everybody out there has also learned so much. And I know Biden has learned a lot. And I just want to, maybe Biden, you want to just thank the sponsors quickly before we close up there, because we're kind of getting over time here.
Always a big thank you to 435 Oils for making this possible, and as well for BH Media, Bevan Harris, and him and myself, of course, exchange the emails and the content. So I want to always a big thank you to him as well for putting it all together and all our graphics and so on. He does an amazing job, and just putting the whole show together. I think, what's it, episode number 19, you and I were just talking about off air. You lose count of the episodes, but this, we're still going strong on YouTube and Facebook, and more for the future.
No, thank you so much, Biden, my co-host. He's always there to back me up, because, I'm a bit of a, let's say, a SIF cop sometimes. I kind of forget, I even forget the episode number sometimes, but it's what it's about. It's just casual.
We make them up as we go along, so,
and I was telling Andrea earlier on, she was a bit stressed out what she's going to speak about. I said, you know what, just relax, just chat, talk from the heart. And that's kind of what it's about. It's a casual chat about, and at the end of the day, we have fun. People learn a lot, and they come back and listen to it next time again. And now with the technology, it's on there forever. You can go back, you can look at it, you can watch it on Facebook and check it on YouTube. You can go back in 2 weeks' time, and you can go back and say, I need to know something about that. You can go back and learn about it. That's really what it's about. I mean, I remember we had Neon on a while back. The brother-in-law, he's talking about race car preparation, and we had a whole lot of stuff. It was so interesting. I mean, the guy was on from Motu, I remember, talking about lubricants. I mean, we learned so much. So yeah, maybe I'll get someone on about gearboxes next time, or differentials, or I don't know, tires or something. We'll find somebody out there.
That will be a big one. Tires, the most, I think, misunderstood or underrated section of motorsport, and one of the most important as well. Tires.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe Andrea can put us onto the right person, because there's very few people who actually know about racing, about tires as far as racing is concerned. Road tires are kind of easy to get people, but slicks and semis and those type of things, it's not compounds and all those things. But we'll get there someday. So Andrea, thank you so much for your time. Really, really, really appreciate it. And we're going to hold George to, I think it's George, if I remember, George Thompson, yes. It's recorded, it's on the internet, it's there. We're going to send him the contact now to say that Andrea's going to drive his car at the next Gymkhana. It was a red Golf, if I'm not mistaken. And I hope it's got a handbrake, because handbrake works quite efficiently. It's like on the Gymkhanas. So thank you very much for the viewers for tuning in tonight. It was awesome. Really, absolutely brilliant program. Andrea, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for all the information that you've given us and what we can take away from you. And you guys know where to get Andrea. Powerflow, Salt River. It's just Google it. It's there. And she'll guide you in the right direction and save you huge amounts of money. Trust me, because you're going to be. That's what it's about. She knows what she's talking about. They honest people. They're not going to BS you. They're just going to tell you what it is, and that's what it is, and it's going to work. Trust me. I've got a system. I got a Mark car, and I'm happy. Actually, must come for an upgrade. So I've got a different engine now. I must come and talk to Andrea again sometime. Anyhow, thank you so much once again, guys. Thank you, Byron. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you to all the viewers.
Thank
and
you,
have a good evening.
Thank you,
and have a blessed and stay safe out there. It's a crazy world, and I'll chat to you guys soon. Thank you very much, and all the best.
Night, guys. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Night, Ben.
My reason to keep on going is because that is my normal. So my love for engines and motorsports and going fast and I guess the wind through your hair and the feeling of speed, I think I was actually born with it. So I grew up on a Saturday. It was a really big treat for me to go down to the racetrack with Dad after work, do naughty things like have ice cream and bubble gum, which my mom wouldn't let us do. And it was a really nice time to bond with my dad and to see what was going on and the smells that you get at the racetrack, the sounds, tires squealing. I started riding motorbikes when I was about 7 years old. I had always wanted to race. I'd always asked if I could race. My parents always said no. It's a very expensive sport. I started working on racing cars pretty much immediately. As I was growing up, I would always like to be handing my dad spanners. First year that I raced, I had a win. In around 2010, I got the opportunity to race for Ford South Africa in their production cars. So I finished the weekend third overall. I applied to something called the FIA Institute Young Driver Excellence Academy. Over 100 applicants, and I was the first African, the first South African, and the first female to ever get into the academy. Test My Ride was a reality TV show that I did, and then you've got to race against a former Formula 1 driver, ex-Formula 1 driver with Ferrari, and all I wanted and hoped in my head and my heart was just to be faster than him. And I was the only person to be quicker than me, because I think one of only 4 people ever machine. And that was a car my dad and I built together. There's something special when it's all your hard work that's gone into making a machine work. That time I was riding, I went to a new place I hadn't ridden at before. And I had my first really big accident. I can't tell you what happened because I have absolutely no idea. I have no recollection of the event at all. I can only tell you what my friends have told me happened. There was a really big jump. They told me I came down head first and the bike came down either on top of me or next to me. We're actually still not sure. I broke my collarbone. I fractured my pelvis in 4 places, 2 vertebrae, and then by landing on my head I had massive brain injury. There were a large number of months where I wasn't allowed to drive a road car. I was off work for about 2 years. My mom came and she said to me, come sit outside. So we went and we sat outside and had a cup of tea at like 10 o'clock in the morning, which is weird if you don't know why you're there.